Hey, this is Denny, and as promised, I wanted to give a little bit of a video on how I was coached to do the meter test. But before I get into that, just a couple things off the top. Firstly, thank you so much for sharing. There's been a lot of people who seem to be dealing with the same issue, so continue to share with your contacts, especially those of us on PEI. That would be great. I also want to say apologies to those who I haven't responded to. Over the past few weeks, I've gotten in the range of like thousands of DMs or comments or shares. So I do apologize if I haven't gotten back to you. Frankly, it's been a little bit overwhelming. For those who haven't seen a prior video, I've just gone Facebook Live in the past, and I felt that it was better to have a non-edited video for this type of thing. But basically, the backstory is I had a huge jump in utility prices with Maritime Electric. I thought there was an issue, and my bill jumped in the range of like times four or times five, up to close to over $900. Through investigating, I've found that I think there is a problem with the meter, and it's been sent away for testing. But the purpose of this video is just to basically provide a bit more detail than they gave me on how to check my breakers and check my meter. Just really quick though, if you haven't watched the video that I shared of Maritime Electric, maybe do that first, because if your power bill jumped by, say, the range of 25, 30, 35%, you might not need to do all this. It could be very explainable why your bill is higher, whether it be colder temperatures, installing a heat pump, or extended billing cycles. All that stuff might explain your bill, and so the next one might even be a little bit cheaper. You never know. Just watch that video before you spend the time watching this one. This would be for people who maybe your electricity jumped 50% without explanation, or in my case, like 400% without explanation. You might want to dive a little bit deeper. I'll also say though, I don't work for Maritime Electric. I don't represent Maritime Electric. The only reason I'm sharing this video is because they sent me a one pager, which it was detailed enough to get the testing started, but I learned a lot when I was out on site with the meter technician, just from him talking me through what he was doing. That one pager, if you call into their customer service, plus maybe this video with some graphics, might be able to help you. Got to start off with that nice Royal LePage red. Just a couple things about your utility meter that you'll need to know. I've just blanked off my own personal meter information here for privacy reasons, but up here is your meter reading, so that's the amount of kilowatt hours you've consumed since this was installed. If I go to the next one, these are a few of the keys. Right here, there's a few blocks that will cycle through, and I'll show a video later, but that's actually what you're counting when you test your breakers right in here. And if they're going left to right, that means it's consuming power, your house is. So before these new smart meters, they had aluminum ones that would actually spin and you could see them moving as it was consuming. This is the equivalent of one revolution of movement spinning, and that's left to right for consumption. Let's say you had a solar system, which I do, but I had the disconnect pulled, which basically means it's not connected at all, not pushing any energy back. But let's say you did have one, and you're generating more than you're consuming. In that case, you might actually see this going from right to left, which means you're pushing energy back onto the grid. So that's the first one. The second one is this KH value, and that you just need to figure out what the number is on your meter, and it will help you to calculate what the load is on your system. So I've really just summarized what Maritime Electric sent to me, but to test your breakers, the reason you're doing this is you're going through your whole panel and you're trying to figure out why something might be consuming way more than others. For instance, let's say you flip all your breakers off and you come to one and it's consuming a crazy amount, which I'll explain how to test in a minute, but you test it and it's consuming a whole bunch, and then it says living room outlets, and then you go upstairs and in the living room you have two space heaters. There's a heat pump that somehow got cycled on there, which probably isn't true, but whatever. A heat pump, there's an air conditioner and a dehumidifier and a TV and etc. and an iguana cage with a bunch of lights in it. At that point, it's like, okay, that's probably a legitimate claim that your breaker is consuming a ton, and maybe you can just stop there. That said, if you tested a breaker and it didn't have anything on it and it was consuming a whole bunch, then you might want to call Maritime Electric and have them come take a look. Anyway, that's the reason you do this. How you actually do this is you start with your main breaker for the whole house. What you want to do first is flip that off and make sure that your meter stops. For me, this test was really easy because I flipped that off and I disconnected my solar and the meter kept going. So obviously there was a problem right off the bat. But let's say that didn't happen for you. What you would do next is flip off all of your individual breakers and then flip the main back on and then just go through them one at a time. So flip the first one on and keep all the rest off and go back outside and count how many revolutions there are on your meter. I'll show a video in a minute about how to count and record that for every single breaker. The more revolutions you see on your meter, that means there's more load on your system. So for instance, if you have a breaker that says like heat pump or dryer and your heat pump or dryer is on, there will be a lot more revolutions on your meter than if you had one that said like bedroom lights. From this information, when you go through and you record how many revolutions over a 60-second period for each breaker, you can calculate your load in kilowatts. I figured I would just share the one pager that they sent to me. That way you can pause or screenshot or copy it down and print it out. Here's the first little bit about breaker testing. To get started, ideally you have 2 people. It talks about what you should look for. Scroll down so you can screenshot if you want. How to go through step by step, going to your panel, verifying your meter, switching off, like I say, testing each circuit, and identify the culprit. So this is just sped up a little bit, but the solar disconnect is off. That's my solar meter. And then this is my utility meter. I'm just setting a timer here for 60 seconds. And then with that timer going, I am counting the revolutions from left to right in the bottom right corner of the meter display. So there's 2. It's a pretty warm day. Heat pumps probably aren't working too hard. Most lights are off, so pretty limited load electrically on the system right now. If you refer back to my other video, the original one, that was cycling like crazy a couple times a second. So now that we know how many revolutions there are, whether you calculated them for the whole house, meaning it was the main breaker was on and all the other breakers were on too, or each individual breaker, now that we know the revolutions, this is the formula to figure out the kilowatts. So it's your number of revolutions times by your KH value times by 3.6 divided by time. And so for this one, I'm just recommending time for 60 seconds. So if I go back, this is your KH value. And if you time yourself for a minute, how many times that cycles from left to right, that's your revolutions. Revolutions times KH times 3.6 divided by time, 60 seconds is what I would recommend. And that gives you your kilowatt. So in the video I just showed, it's nice out today, so the heat pumps probably aren't working very hard. Most of the lights are off. My house likely isn't doing that much. It was about 7, it might have been 8 revolutions in the 60 seconds. So 7 times 1, which is my KH value, times 3.6, and then divide all that by 60. I was using just under half a kilowatt. That's pretty much in line with what I would expect. What I would not expect is if you go back to my very first video, the one that went crazy viral, almost 2 million views and thousands of shares, if you check to see how many revolutions there were and then scale it up to 60 seconds, it's about 83. So 83 by my KH value of 1 by 36, and then divide that by 60 seconds, just under 5 kilowatts. It's 4.99 or 98 kilowatts. Crazy high. Like crazy high, even if all the stuff in the house was on. Like you'd have to have both dryers going, both stoves, both heat pumps. You'd have to have a lot on to get 5 kilowatts, let alone that the main breaker was pulled and the solar disconnect was pulled. So that should be 0 with no revolutions. Okay, so you've gone through that process. You did either your main breaker tests or your individual breaker tests, and now you have an idea of how many kilowatts your system was using at that time. What do you actually do with it? Well, the first step would be to call Maritime Electric, explain that you've put the work in and you think maybe there's something wrong with your system, it's over consuming. The tricky part here is you have to have a good idea what your loads actually are. And that's an easy thing to say from a mechanical engineer. But what if you have no idea? I'd start by just doing some Googling. You know, if you figure out that one of your breakers has 2 or 3 kilowatts on it and it's the dryer or the heat pumps or the stove, or maybe your whole kitchen is on one, which it shouldn't be, but maybe it was on one. If you start summing together a few of your possible loads and it's close, it might not be worth your time to call. But if it's way off like mine was, you might be able to call and say, I think that this is wrong. I've added it up myself. I know my loads. I'd like a technician to come out. Maybe they'll send somebody. It's easy for me to say that they should because they did for me, but I know that might not happen for everybody. I would certainly hope that it would. In my case, I had a video proving that the disconnects were pulled and it was still cycling. Clearly there was something wrong, so I was able to get somebody out to my house. But in my experience, he was great to deal with, and he did all the checks and made sure it wasn't something faulty with my system or my solar system or my breaker panel, and was able to just verify that something's not right and then give me the option to dispute the meter, which I took. So again, thank you for watching. Hopefully you don't even have to go through this process. I would say your first step is just test with your main breaker and see if the meter keeps going. And it might be an easy solution for you like it was for me. I appreciate all the support. Feel free to share this video. There's clearly an audience for this type of stuff. So I think I'm going to do a few more videos. Energy study results. I'm going to do one on heating system efficiencies. So whether maybe you're one of the new propane furnaces versus an old oil boiler, or an old oil furnace versus a heat pump, talk about the different efficiencies, the pros and cons. I'm also going to do one on heat pumps, on COP, which is their efficiency, on capacities, and on, at what outdoor air temperature does it not make sense to use your heat pump anymore. So if you're interested in any of that, I'd encourage you to either like my Facebook page, or probably better yet, subscribe to this YouTube page below. And I'll post those sometime over the next month, as I'll do them as quick as I kind of can. But it's certainly a busy time of year in real estate. So I'll just do my best there. Anyway, thank you very much for listening and for sharing and commenting and doing it all. I appreciate your time.